Hi, good evening. My name is Marco Martinez from CloudLob, and today we actually have a new series of videos that will basically try to teach you something new from the cloud. And in this case, we will start with something very simple in how to post data from an HTTP post request with a JSON body and create a new item in DynamoDB in AWS. So for that, I have here a small diagram with basically describing what's going on. So we have our user on the left that is sending an HTTP post request with JSON on the body of the request. That it's connected to an API gateway. That API gateway has a method, a post method, that will trigger a Lambda function. And on the configuration for that trigger, we have Lambda proxy enabled. And if we jump to our Lambda function, we're running on a NodeJS 8.1, and our Lambda function will basically query or put new data into our Dynamo database. And at the top, we have the CloudWatch metrics or logs, so our console log from our Lambda function. So let's go and dive into it, and let's go to our Amazon console. So let's search for Lambda. Let's create first our Lambda function. Create a new one. Let's call this simple function tree. Let's choose our runtime and select 8.1, NodeJS 8.1. And the reason I'm choosing 8 over 10 is that I'm finding that the latest version, the 10.0, is not ready yet. I found that the console log sometimes not working, so that's the reason that I'm using the 8.1. Let's choose our execution role. Our execution roles are basically the permissions that our Lambda function has. So, and here we actually just click on create, and here on the right we have the permissions that our simple function tree has now. For example, this function has access to CloudFormation, AWS IoT, AWS Lambda, and more. So that's the execution level, or the permissions that this function has. On the left, we have the triggers, and triggers can be an update on a database, and a new item created on S3, and there's tons of events available. And in our case, we want to an API gateway. When someone is executing a post request, we want that to be as our trigger point for our event. So let's scroll down and see our function. So we don't have anything fancy. The only thing that we're returning is this object, response object, with a status code 200 and with a body hello from Lambda. So let's change that to hello from CloudLob. And okay, we have that. So now let's start creating our API gateway. Our API in API gateway. Let's create that with same as our function API name. Endpoint type. So that's we have 3 different options. We have regional, edge optimized, and private. So regional, if you go to the top, here I have North Virginia, US East 1. So those are actually the regions, Amazon regions, where Amazon they have something, a physical thing there. So those are regions like data centers. It's not obviously that, but they have actually more infrastructure going on there. But Amazon call them regions, where they actually have everything very close together, and where for performance wise, if you choose when you choose a region, you have to choose the region that's the closest to your to where the client will work with. So for example here, so I'm choosing North Virginia, and then we have edge optimized. So this is actually the next level. So regions, we have an X amount of regions. There are we don't have a lot. And edge locations are actually hundreds of edge locations. So those are like counter delivery network edge endpoints, where actually your content is cached. So it's basically when you have to deploy something that has to be global or from different regions, like if you are in North America, then Asia. So that's where you will want to go and on an edge deployment. And finally, private. So when you have a VPN. Let's create our API. Let's create our first a resource. Resources like, for example, like folder. So test. Inside our resource test, we want to create a new method. Again, we already discussed that we want a post request to trigger our Lambda function. So post. Let's enable Lambda proxy integration. So what is Lambda proxy integration? So Lambda it is basically that we want to control from our Lambda function the status response and the response and the headers of our response. So that's basically Lambda proxy integration in my own words. So Lambda function is okay. So let's add our function. Let's click save. So okay, it's there. So now it's attached to our Lambda function. So if we refresh this page from our Lambda function, we now see that we have now a trigger. And if we click there, and if we scroll down, now we have the configuration and the parameters of our endpoint. I'm sorry, of our trigger. But we have the endpoint there available also. So to complete our API, we have to deploy our API. So to make it public, we have to click on Actions, then click Deploy API. Deployment stage, let's create a new one. So deployment stages, so those are basically like environments. So for example, you have a production environment, develop environment, QA environment, lab environment. So those are environments, and in this case those are called stages, where you have for example, you have a V1 version that can be also in a stage, V2 version, those can also be in a stage. So those are deployments stages. So it's already deployed, my dev stage, and if I click on post, now I have my endpoint, my URL that I can execute and test. So for that, I'm gonna use Postman. I'm gonna just paste this here, and for that I'm gonna send a simple JSON object with two keys, name and email, test at gmail.com. Let's send that information, and yes, it's working. At the bottom we have a response from API and from Lambda, hello from Cloud Love. So it is working. That's good. That's good news. Now let's go back to our Lambda function, and I just want to explain something very fast, very quickly. So event, what is that object, that variable? So if let's console log that variable event, and then in this case parameter, but it's an object, so we have to stringify it. I got this, stringify event. Save it. Let's test this from this screen, and I'm gonna send the following parameters to my Lambda function. So key 1, key 2, key 3, and the following values. So that's gonna be my event parameters. And when I hit test, you will see that okay, this is the return. So this is the response of the function, the return value. And in the console log, you see that it's printing out as a JSON object the key value thing that we sent. So this JSON object. So if we try the same, but now with from Postman, that is executing an API gateway that is triggering our Lambda function. Let me just click on logs. You will see that we have a much larger object with a lot more options and configurations and key and values available. So this is the response. This is the event parameters. So let me just copy that JSON object, I'm going to just create another test event. Let's go in this API gateway. So let's go through and see what's going on here. So in this JSON object, we have the method. We have a bunch of key available, key and values are available, but the thing that we are interested on is the body. So remember that we sent this body on our post request, name, test, email, and email address, and that is located on the parameters of the event. So on the event trigger parameters inside body, and inside body there is a string with the JSON as a string. So let's now convert that to an object. So let body equal JSON. Now we have to do the opposite. So to parse the string into an object, event dot body. Perfect. So now we have our body as an object, and we can access each key from our JSON. We can access the name and email that we're sending. Okay, so now we have that figured out. So what's the event and what we are sending, and how to basically parse the JSON from the event body. Now we want to enable what we want is to work with Dynamo. So for that, let me go to AWS JS SDK. First, this one, document client. This is how to use Dynamo. But let me also search for AWS JS SDK. No, it's API documentation. This one from Amazon. So this is how to use the AWS SDK for JavaScript. So it means how to use all the resources that Amazon has, it's offering, or all the resources, how to, for example, create a new user, how to insert data into a database, how to create a database, everything from the JavaScript SDK. So for that, the first thing that they are actually teaching us is how to install that SDK library from Node.js or in JavaScript. And in our case, because we are already in a Lambda function, and the Lambda function has already the libraries pre-installed, so the only thing that we have to do is just enable that library. So for that, we just have to import that into in Node. So for that, if we scroll down here in Node.js section, this is import entire SDK library, or import individual pieces. So, but we want to import the entire thing just to make it easier. Let me click here. Let's import that. So let's paste that in at the top. Oh my god, I missed something. I'm sorry. This one. That's for TypeScript, and we're in JavaScript. I'm sorry. So yes, constant. AWS record AWS SDK. And now for the Dynamo, let's see the available methods. So the available methods that we have here is we have how to delete something, how to get, how to query, how to scan the entire table. But the thing that we want is just to insert something. So put creates a new item, or replace an old item with the new item by put an item. So basically this is what we want. So either insert something new or replace something that's already there with the new data. And this is the parameters. So let's copy the parameters. Let's have those parameters in here. So as you can see, the requirement we have for the requirements, the table and the item is as an object. Let me just delete that. In order to use Dynamo, we have to enable the library. For that, let's also change it to a constant. So document client, as you can see, it's new AWS Dynamo database document client. Okay, and finally, the method. But because we are using an asynchronous function in Node.js, I like to convert that method into a promise. So for that, let me show you how it's gonna look. So yes, promise, and if we go to the Mozilla documentation that's for JavaScript, that is extremely good. Here we at the top we have how to construct a promise, or how to create a promise. So I'm gonna just copy that. Go to my Lambda function again. Let's create a new function. Name put or Dynamo put. We want to pass the params, and inside this function, let's paste the promise, the template. So we don't want that the promise to be assigned to a variable. We want to return the promise. And let's delete the set timeout. So we don't want to work with that timeout. Let's copy the document client put it inside. And a promise can be either resolve or reject. Resolve when everything goes well, and reject when we have an error. So let's copy reject. And here, if we have an error, we want to reject that error with the error details. And if everything goes well, we want to resolve with the data. And that's it. So we converted our method into a promise. That's cool. So now let's go to our at the top. So let's start plugging everything together. So let's Dynamo. Let's call Dynamo database equals await. So we want to wait for the response. The name of the function. We want to pass the parameters. If everything goes well, then response. We want to return that. So let's return the response. If an error, we want to catch that error. And for the error, I like to print that out. So let's console log error and also return the error. So the response is going to be returned to this variable, or the error is going to be returned to this variable. Okay. And finally, we want to return that to, or the thing that it's consuming this function. So we want to return that the response of the result of the Dynamo database in the response. So let's change instead of a constant, let's change this to let. Let's remove the body. And now we want to modify the body. Response that body equals JSON stringify Dynamo. So basically, in the body response, in the body, we are returning a JSON with the details of our Dynamo query or error. So now we just have to fix the parameters. Now we have to provide a table. So, but we haven't created any Dynamo database table. So let's create a new one. Console API. Dynamo database. Let's create a new table. Let's name the table the same as our function. Partition keys. So partition keys, that's a unique key. So for example, here we're dealing with names and email addresses. So names, so we can have actually lots of Marcos, lots of Davids in a company, but we can only have one email address per person. So let's use that as our partition key, as our primary key. So first user email. That's gonna be our primary key. And sort keys. So I normally use sort keys when I'm dealing with something that has to be filtered or sorted. Like for example, when I have dates and I want just to extract data from a specific date, that's where I'm using a sort key. So the sort key will be the date, and I can just, when I'm querying or scanning the table, I can just provide that date range to return the data from that specific time frame. So that's the sort key. But from this video, we won't use that the sort key. So let's now click on create to create our table. So that's the name of our function. So we can just copy that, go back to our Lambda function, and paste that. And our item. So this is items. So let's create an item. So the item has to, as you can see, the key that is mandatory is our primary key, and in our case is user email. So let's have that here. And let's also have our name. So user name. And now let's from the body. So from this body, we know that we have the name and email available. So let's use them. So body email, body name. So with this, we're now using the name and email that we're sending to create our new item in Dynamo database. Okay, so let's save this. Let's give it a shot. So okay, let's have a quick recap. So basically, first we're just parsing. So we're converting the JSON string into an object from the event body. The parameters is only we're providing just the table name, and the item that we're inserting is it's an object, and we're inserting the primary key, and basically now our name. So it's an object. We're using a asynchronous function and await a promise to put the parameters on, to put the object in Dynamo, and we're returning on the response body the result of that Dynamo put. Okay, so let's save it. Let's give it a shot. Let's go to Postman. Click send. Yeah, it's working. So it's returning a 200k empty JSON. So let's give it a shot. Let's go here into simple function tree Dynamo. Click and refresh. And yes, we have our user email with the primary key as test. Let's try something else. I'm trying something different here. So name Marco, email address marcoinap@gmail.com. So let's send that. Refresh again, and yes, it is working. So let's try to make an error. Let's not provide the email address, so we know that the email address is the mandatory key. And yes, we are now getting an error. So one or more parameters were invalid, missing the key user email in the item. So as you can see, it's working, and I hope you like it, and thank you for watching. Have a nice day.